Hi, and maybe it's not, an academic who keeps getting made redundant. I'm here to deconstruct the political issues that are shaping the 21st century. In this leftover, we're going to discuss the uproar over the controversial musician Kanye West's previously scheduled headlining performance at the Wireless Festival and unravel the political implications of this spectacle. Now, Kanye West has spent much of the past 20 years expressing problematic political views. This has involved him spitting out pro-Nazi and anti-Semitic bile, including a song in 2025 titled Hail Hitler. He later apologised, as he often does, attributing this to being bipolar. Importantly, most people with bipolar disorder are not rich or powerful enough to publish an anti-Semitic pro-Nazi song, apologise some 6 months later, and then try to go on like nothing happened. And most people with bipolar disorder would likely take action to stop these sorts of things happening again and again and again. And they probably wouldn't sell t-shirts with swastikas on them. Nevertheless, Kanye West had been booked to perform at the Wireless Festival. This had been approved by important stakeholders, according to the festival managers, until a public outcry started to develop. Sponsors started to pull out, and then the UK government denied Kanye West a permit to work in the UK. Now, the first point to be made here is that as a political actor and celebrity, it's unlikely that Kanye West will have really been damaged all that much by being denied an opportunity to perform at this venue. People will have seen the fuss and then West's apologetic statements in response, including him expressing a wish to speak with the Jewish community. Many will doubt the sincerity of his appeals, but anyone who seriously disapproves probably already disapproved. Yet, as the saying goes, there's no publicity like bad publicity. So while some may be cross, other people will have been reminded of his music due to the publicity, and still others will see this as his punishment, and after which they can go back to listening to his music as if nothing had happened. If we're cynical about it, he can't lose. People like him who have an international following and extraordinary assets in many respects live in a different world to most other people when it comes to taking responsibility for their actions. Another important dimension here is that the UK government gets what it likely sees as a free win. They look firm and decisive against a controversial figure with seemingly zero risk of kickback. Yet, whether you think Kanye West should be blocked from entering the country or not, there is a sense in which this is a window dressing for the government's absolute lack of action in other situations. The same weekend this happened, the US president threatened to wipe out Iran as a civilization, including attacking civilian infrastructure like bridges and power stations. The UK government did not come out in opposition to this, as other countries have done. Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, asked why the Prime Minister had said nothing. His question, so far, has been ignored. Though late in the week, long after he'd made a strong stand against Kanye West, Starmer made a mild reproach to Trump, saying that he would not have used these words. There was not any substantive, strong position expressed by Starmer, like what you've seen with, say, the Spanish Prime Minister. But the government has bent over backwards to ensure their barring of Kanye West from entering the country has been highly visible. Now, these are not zero-sum issues. It would be quite possible to express a position on the US as well as Kanye West. Nor does Starmer necessarily need to match Trump's level of rhetoric. It would be perfectly possible to craft a diplomatically worded response to a Western leader declaring their intention to inflict untold death and destruction upon countless civilians without necessarily inflaming the situation. Instead, we have Starmer's deafening silence. Now, the other issue to be addressed is whether the state is overreaching, and whether their action is in fact justified at all. Revealing here is the defence of the Wireless Festival provided by Melvin Benn, the managing director of the festival organisers. He suggested that West should be forgiven because of mental health struggles, and that there is a legal right to come into the country and to perform in this country. Whether Ben really believes this is a sufficient justification is beside the point, but taken to its extremes, this could be used to justify all manner of evils. But what is clear is that Ben needed to make a defence like this. A lot of money was riding on it, as the Wireless Festival had booked Kanye West to headline all 3 days. Incidentally, I'm not a festival goer, but this always seems slightly odd to me, because as I understand it, many people like to buy weekend tickets, and would this not be a more appealing prospect if you had different headline artists on the 3 days? And would you really bank your cards on one highly controversial artist in this way, literally less than a year after he sold t-shirts with swastikas on them? Anyway, either way, because of this decision and the subsequent barring of Kanye West from entering the country, the Wireless Festival has been cancelled. So this is the context, this financial context is where Ben has appealed to a ruling liberal ideology, which many major political parties in the UK appeal to at least some extent. And I do mean Labour appeals to this, the Liberal Democrats appeal to this, Conservatives appeal to this, even in some form, the Reform Party appeals to this. This is not a fringe position. Now, according to this ideology, the primary point of politics and social management more broadly is to allow the individual to fully realise themselves and to prioritise stopping things interfering with individuals as they live their lives. That's the express position. Okay, but in practical terms, this takes slightly different forms. Free markets and small states are seen by those on the right to allow people to act as effective entrepreneurs. Less right-wing liberals often accept this position as well, but believe in some more state action to ensure the social freedom of individuals. Now, by presenting themselves as securing the needs of the individual, liberals do much to secure the atomisation of society because they don't address the collective structure of contemporary capitalism in which people exist as individuals. So by focusing on the individual as a category above all else, they divert attention away from the collective conditions of those individuals. Having said this, we can quickly deal with the non-left-wing positions on this affair by noting that a certain kind of liberal might argue that intruding on Kanye West and his audience's rights to artistic fulfillment, and with their personal artistic expression, is state overreach. Meanwhile, others might argue that Kanye West's performance would inhibit the freedom of others. This latter is basically the position adopted by Labour, the Conservatives, and the Liberal Democrats. Interestingly, the Reform Party are arguing strongly against restricting Kanye West's access, which is curious, considered they argued strongly that the rapper Bob Vylan should have been censored and arrested after leading anti-IDF chants at last year's Glastonbury Festival. It's noteworthy that in that respect they agreed with the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Labour, who were being very negative about Bob Vylan. Now, this is a very interesting point because it's worth emphasising the difference between West and Vylan here. It's highly revealing, even if you don't defend Vylan's action, you need to understand that there's a difference in these actions. It is West who was in fact directly anti-Semitic. He has directly endorsed Nazi positions and at one stage said he wished to go DEFCON 2 on Jewish people, writ large. Meanwhile, Vylan expressed ill feelings towards an army that was, in the words of the United Nations, inflicting genocide on the Palestinian people. The IDF is not exclusively comprised of Jewish people, and not all Jewish people are in the IDF. To criticise the IDF is not to criticise all Jewish people. Not everyone will think that Bob Vylan acted in a reasonable way, but it is undeniable that Kanye West's positions are not nuanced in this way. The established UK parties, as I said, would not recognise the gulf between these two acts, but at least they have remained consistent. Unlike Reform, who by rallying to Kanye West's defence have very openly slipped into an incoherent populism. A left-wing position here is distinguished from both the liberal and the populist position, and provides revealing other dimensions to the affair. This is because the non-liberal left simply recognises the greater roles the social class has on people's life. This means that we can more coherently acknowledge that individuals are only individuals insofar as they are part of a collective class and social situation, and that is to say, they occupy a structural position within our social world. Most obviously, how they are able to live their lives is determined by whether they are a capitalist or a worker, whether they pay someone for labour and profit from that labour, or whether they are the labourer. The left holds that these class dimensions need to be addressed as well. That's because we may well all have the theoretical right to express ourselves freely, but when you're very rich, you have a considerably greater ability to do so because of how our society is structured. This plays out in how if most of us were to do what Kanye West has done over the past 25 years, we'd risk jail time, or at least considerable threats to our ability to live our life in the same way. The leftist dream would be for these class dimensions to eventually fade away, so that the individual would not be rigidly caged. In this respect, Marx put it very clearly nearly 200 years ago in the German ideology. And this would be a society where, this is quoting Marx, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes. Society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing and another thing tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticise after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming a hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. Now, of course, Kanye West can probably do all these things quite freely, because he's got the money to do so. But his lifestyle is funded by his profiting from a system in which people are exploited. Such experience of freedom is not lost entirely to the rest of us, of course. One of the miracles of art in general in capitalist society is that through artistic expression or engagement, we can experience the possibility of something happening for the sake of it, and therefore of not being confined to doing what is strictly necessary. However, this is on the other hand a sort of consolation prize in our social world. We can engage with art so as to make the fact we're less than free the rest of the time a bit more bearable. Now, art may sometimes be emancipatory and approach real freedom. It can help people recognise their place in society and recognise, or at least feel the need to change it. But considering Kanye West's regressive lyrics and unchallenging music, it is hard to imagine his appearance at the Wireless Festival would have allowed such an experience. It would more simply be a nice night out, one way of spending your time and money over another. This is the limit of liberal freedom. You are able to express yourself as an individual, but only within certain limits. You're not empowered to really change and shape your collective social situation. So a left-wing response to the Kanye West situation would firstly need to acknowledge that any claim to freedom is encapsulated in the concert taking place or not is not true freedom. The concert going ahead would not do anything to emancipate people from their social condition. At best, it would celebrate the freedom to remain in the box we're put in by our current social world. This is in the other sense in which Zach Polanski's criticism of Starmer is quite valid. By focusing on Kanye West's concert and not commenting on what's going on in the world, he is focusing on abstract, meaningless matters, rather than the concrete conditions which can be changed for people to be emancipated. On the other hand, it has to be recognised that it is safe to say that someone as influential as Kanye West unironically endorsing Adolf Hitler is not conducive to improving our collective conditions. Alongside the 6 million Jews, millions of non-Jewish civilians were murdered by the Nazis. Fascism is a displacement of a social antagonism onto weakened others. And anyone can be a weakened other. So it's quite coherent to say, from a left-wing perspective, that reactionary concerts like that are highly undesirable. However, the problem is, and this is the catch-22, that we have a reactionary state and a political class which does not distinguish between Bob Dylan and Kanye West. So endorsing state intervention on whether a performance should go ahead or not is not an easy position to adopt, for two reasons. One, it risks being drawn into culture wars where we endlessly argue over which banning is justified or not. Two, it could embolden a reactionary state to silence opposition, since politics is necessarily contextual. It is in this respect that the only position that ought to be taken following the ban is a negative critical position, which highlights the real reason why Starmer is so loudly proclaiming this position. Right, that's a wrap. If you want to hear more analyses about what's going on in the world, consider subscribing. Alternatively, if you think I'm a bit of an idiot, feel free to tell me why in the comments. But either way, have a good week.